The red and white stripes meaning 13 colonies, the white stars in the blue square of the flag that represent all 50 states of America. But did you know that the first American flag had only 13 stars on the flag? Well, back in the late 1700s, it did, and the person who sewed the first American flag was Besty Ross. So let's talk about the woman behind the first American flag from the Revolutionary section from Story of America cards. Besty Ross, also known as Elizabeth Gresham Ross, was an American upholsterer who was credited by her relatives in 1870 with the making of the first American flag, which is also known as the Besty Ross flag, which is an early design of the flag of the United States, and she was the one who made it during the conformant to the Flag Act of 1777. When the Stars and Stripes were officially adopted for the new American flag on June 14, 1777, by the Continental Congress, it was described as 13 stripes, alternate red and white, with a union of 13 stars on a blue field, representing a new constellation. The stars were arranged sometimes in a circle, more often in rows. According to tradition, the person who sewed together the first United States flag was Besty Ross. Although there are no definite proof of this exists, there is enough evidence available to historians to believe that she did indeed make the first flag. The picture usually painted of a demure young girl bending industriously over needlework may be somewhat less accurate. However, Besty Ross was in fact independent. She was cast out of Quaker meetings for interloping. High-spirited, she married 3 times, and a astute businesswoman, she ran her own upholstery business. Bessie Gresham Ross was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on New Year's Day of 1752. After attending a Quaker school, she was banned from attending Quaker meetings in 1774 because she had interloped with John Ross, an upholsterer. According to Quaker beliefs, she should have been married to their own meeting house. 3 years after the marriage, John Ross joined the Revolutionary Army and was killed in a gunpowder explosion. His widow carried on alone in the upholstery business, and shortly thereafter, George Washington and Robert Morse, a Philadelphian, apparently asked Besty Ross to make the first flag. Following the basic design described by the Special Continental Committee set up for the purpose, the information was first made public by Besty Ross's descendant, William Canby, at a meeting of the Historical Society of Pennsylvania in March 1870. The records of Pennsylvania's Navy Board did show that making flags was part of Besty Ross's business, and on that May 29, 1777, she was paid 14 pounds for doing so. The same year, Besty Ross married a Navy man by the name of Captain Joseph Ashburn, but he was captured at sea and died later in a British prison. Besty Ross was informed about her second husband's death by an old family friend, John Claypole, who was also imprisoned in the British camp with Ashburn. Ross then married Claypole in 1783 and remained together until Claypole's death in 1817. Flagmaker Besty Ross died in Philadelphia on January 30th, 1836, at the age of 84. The so-called Besty Ross house is a popular tourist site in Philadelphia, but it is still a matter of historical academic dispute whether she actually lived there or not, as evidence indicates she actually lived from 1776 to 1779 in a house next door that was torn down after the remaining house was designated. Ross's body was first interred at the Free Quaker Burial Grounds on North 5th Street in Philadelphia, but in 1856 the remains of Ross and her husband, the third one, John Claypole, was moved from the Free Quaker Burying Ground to Mount Moriah Cemetery. The practice of cemeteries purchasing the remains of famous historical individuals was common in order to drive attentional business. The Daughters of the American Revolution erected a flagpole at the site of her grave in her memory. And in 1975, in preparation for the American Bicentennial, city leaders ordered the remains moved to the courtyard of the Besty Ross house. However, cemetery workers found no remains beneath her tombstone. Bones found elsewhere in the family plot were deemed to be hers, and her reinterred in the current grave visited by tourists at the Besty Ross house. There is also the Besty Ross Bridge, connecting Philadelphia with Pennsauken Township, New Jersey, across the Delaware River, is named in her honor. Biographer Maura Miller has argued that Ross's legacy should not be about a single flag, but rather because of what her story tells us about working women and men during the American Revolution. And that is the history of Besty Ross, told from the Story of America card. I hope you enjoyed this and learning about Besty Ross, and I'll see you next time when I talk about another one. Goodbye.